Hello. Hello. Good afternoon. Finding words at the moment is really difficult. It's not often I'm like that, or at least not the past couple of years. But and I just want to start. It's just like I'm fully aware. I'm speaking about my problems again, and there's a big, real life crisis happening. Evacuees and deaths and carnage. And I remember, was it only 2 weeks ago, I thought to myself, God, thank God I'm not talking about myself at the moment, because it's just so inappropriate for what's going on. It would sound so wrong. I'm sure it does. But when you look at it, you look at the situation that's the real problem in this world, and you come at it from the perspective that I do, with my perception of it, it's a farce. What I'm trying to say is, you don't need to be a conspiracy theorist to see that there's something wrong with the world. Asking a few simple questions will highlight that. But for some reason, entering into any narrative that isn't the mainstream automatically plants you in that category, and that category hasn't got a good reputation. That category's got full of people that are insane and mad and wacky views about reality. Why can't we just accept what's here in front of us? Why do we need to think anymore? But as I said, I know within myself that, sorry for the noise, it's making some Greek meatballs. But I know within myself that asking a few simple questions to someone who might not have thought about the world in that way will highlight the obvious and glaring contradictions there are to society within the world, the collective society. And at that level, when you go into it a little bit further and maybe get a few ideas, and at that level you could be referenced as a conspiracy theorist, but when the obvious is a lie, and all you're doing is searching for truth. And as long as you're open to the statement that, look, I don't know what's going on, but what we're told by the newspapers and the TV isn't the whole story. So it's wise to do your own research and start asking the question, why? Why is this taking place? Is it not? Not when life is at risk and countries are being ripped to bits and the mainstream narrative doesn't make sense. Nobody should ever fear the question of brainwashed people that are willing not to label someone a conspiracy theorist, because that's just a label, but the stigma that might go alongside that label. And you know what? From my perspective, as what would automatically be labelled as a conspiracy theorist, the most painful thing when I'm trying to express simple truths and possible ideas alongside those truths is the ignorance of people to be able to see truth. And you look at the human, and what is a human being without truth? They can be whatever they want to be, but without truth, whatever they become won't be what they wanted it themselves to be. Because if they're not truthful, they're going to become something else, somebody else's idea of reality, somebody else's idea of being human. And that for me is the most painful thing. Why am I sharing these ideas? Is it to hear my own voice? Or is it to break through ignorance with truth? And unfortunately, stating the truth, just the truth, people either hear or they're too much in pain and they can't hear. And it's their choice, wherever they're at. The seed is sown, isn't it, so to speak. Hopefully one day, when their lives are ready from the pain of their existence up until that point, having been a lie and needing to admit to yourself that my whole life is a lie, my whole life is a lie, our whole lives are a lie. But I realised that a long time ago, and I'm searching for the truth, and I'm on that road. And the later you leave it, the harder it gets, I imagine. I mean, they're meant to be meatballs, but they're disintegrated. And at that perspective of the world, that you know you've got all of this suffering that's taking place, that's a lie. There's no air. What are you going to do? Because everything that you live by supports that lie. Not only does it support the death, but it supports the blanket of ignorance and confusion that's been put over humanity to really find a solution. And it's painful to witness. And after a while, you just ask yourself, you see the same news every day. This amount of people have died, this amount of tragedies happened, this amount of destruction, unnecessary destruction's taken place. This amount of million refugees are on the move, and God knows what their lives are going to be like. And you see it. And we're powerless in the first instance, you know, even if it was like all truth what the media said. It's just that simple. We've got this Putin over here, and he's just gone a bit mad, and because he has too much power he can do what he wants to do. And America and the EU are all the good guys. China's just being impartial because they're trying to be impartial, not to get involved like Switzerland, not to let us kill ourselves so they become the top dog in the world. And nothing more, you know, it's just like the simplicity of what the media say. Even if it was that, we're powerless. What are we going to do? start a social media campaign. It's just ridiculous. Put up a Ukrainian refugee. Right, you might be able to put a band-aid on a wound that needs years and years of therapy and physical therapy to heal, and putting a band-aid on it is a bit of a piss take. To a certain extent, a bit like some charity in the world. You question if charity... Now, I don't believe charities have any malintent, but the very act and the very reality that charity exists somewhat hides the true extent of world problems. I've asked myself for many years, I imagine what the world would look like if charity didn't exist. And people still donated to charities. And what those charities did, instead of trying to deal with donkeys in Pakistan that aren't being looked after, and the whales in Japan, and the famine in Africa, and the war in Ukraine, if they just said, what we're going to do, keep donating people, and at the end of the year, all the charities get together, pool their money together, and with what I estimate is likely to be in the several trillions, we'll actually make an impact in this world, so we can stop having a million tragedies all around the world that all need charity, and really be a bit more practical about it. Because charity doesn't really ever, well, I'm sure it does, but charity doesn't really stand a chance to remedy whatever problem it goes up against. I'm sure it's happened on a few occasions, but there are many more charities out there that would back up the opposite argument. So even if you believe the mainstream media, we're powerless. And then if you see that what the mainstream media puts out is a lie, and you don't know the truth, you're even more powerless. So it becomes a bit sickening after a while. You have compassion for all the suffering and destruction taking place. You don't even know what's going on. All you know is the finality is whatever's going on, people are willing to let people die. Whole countries to be ripped apart. So after a while, it's just like too painful to watch anymore. And I've just watched it for 2 weeks, and I shouldn't have, because I've got a mental health disorder and I need to be monitoring what entertainment in terms of food I consume. So that's maybe an idea to turn off the news to my... But needs more salt. My problems have hit home in addition to all of that. I can't believe watching the news attracted this level of insanity into my life to deal with. But it's come, and it's hard, and my life was hard enough for a long time now. And then I've been asked to accept this on top, and the reality is, it's been building up. My life has been building up to this point for a long time. In other words, it's like I'm one of those donkeys to a certain extent. Life is asking me to take on more and more and more ridiculous suffering. It's like, we'll make this bad thing happen to you. I have a breakdown, I learn to deal with it. And then they up the ante a little bit. I get used to it. They up the ante a little bit more. They get used to it. It's been happening for a few years now. And it's got to the point where it's a case of, if I want to stay sane, and coherent to life, I have to admit to myself that what's just taken place is a personal experience of life, taking everything into account, my mental health, money, survival, caring for myself, the ridiculous, atrocious care the system has for people with mental health disorders. That's more painful than the mental health disorder to begin with. And I've got to manage all those things, and it's got to the point in the past week where it's too much. And if I wasn't on top of myself in managing a sinking ship, I wouldn't have realised that now's the time to pull back my energy from trying to stop the shipping. That's the effects of the stroke I had last year. Stop the ship sinking. Reserve your energy, because you've got a long lifeboat journey ahead of you, or floating at sea with a life vest on. Nothing you can do, like my lack of awareness for the meatballs cooking, will stop them burning. Shit happens because we're alive, because reality is real, because science exists on one level, and shit will happen. Shit will burn, shit will sink. Luckily I turned it down and I forgot, so they haven't burnt to an extent they're not edible. But I've realised my life was sinking, and there was nothing left that I could do that would stand a chance of me saving it anymore. So I'm stopping. I had an idea yesterday that sounded good in the first instance. I said, no, I've got to really be sure. If I want to commit to this idea of helping such a insane situation, it's got to have a realistic chance of working. And on reflection, you can achieve something, but ultimately, all the signs still point that the ship is going to sink. And even if I were to do this, it's more of an idea of how to let the ship go, if that makes sense. So in other words, you've surrendered to the idea the boat's done and it's gone. What's the best way to get myself to dry land again? But the reality is, emotionally and energetically, the ship was keeping me alive. The fight to save the ship was keeping me alive. And any thought of surrendering, saving that ship from sinking, if it requires more energy from me, I haven't got it. And unfortunately, this idea requires more energy. So where I am is a place of depression, deadness, non-functioning, physical pain, emotional pain that I can't handle. And I'm standing here and I'm cooking, and it feels like I'm having to fight again just to make my dinner. Fighting through physical pain, emotional pain, and there's no air. So I needed to hear my own voice, even though making a live stream at the moment is the last thing that I really want to do. I just needed to express anything. So I'll leave you all alone now.